Welcome to another episode of the Mr. Therapist and the Counselor Podcast. Jesse O.
Today, listeners Q&A.
Listeners Q&A. Please subscribe to the show. Let us know if you get value out of it. If you do get some value, share the show, man. Do it. So we got listeners who have submitted
Welcome to
questions.
the show, everybody, this week.
We already did that.
I know, we're not doing I know, but we started off so, we kind of do a little more smoother.
We're still trying to get our stuff going. Yeah.
Are we after all this time? We
7
know each other
episodes,
so well.
8 episodes.
Can you count? By this time, I think this one comes out, it will be episode 50, won't it?
Yeah, I wore my purple pants twice. So, yeah, we're starting to recycle through
Once
the
again,
clothing.
hashtag purple pants. You don't have to be a follower, as I was informed that being a follower means that it's almost kind of cultish.
Yeah,
to say,
cultish.
but today we're going to have listeners,
yeah.
people that actually listen to our podcast. We'd asked them to submit questions today, and we're going to go through some of those questions.
Yeah.
So,
Can I just say, just thank you for responding, for asking questions, and for just listening. I think we're getting some good viewers, some consistent people checking in on our show, getting a lot of comments, a lot of feedback about our show. So, thanks.
yeah, the questions we received too, I was going through them, and I was like, wow, these are pretty inspiring to maybe not even talk about on this episode, but I could see it almost like, I felt like some of the questions could have been like,
Be a show.
Be our own, like a full podcast episode on some of the questions here today. So, but let's start off with the first one. One of the questions was asked, what motivates us to show up? And the question was more just most motivated to why we do, that's kind of what it's about, right? Like, why we're in the field, what motivates us to show up to the office, what motivates us
as a therapist, as a counselor,
Yeah.
what motivates you to show up that way? Okay. Do you want me to go for? Want me to
Yes,
answer that
I'm
first?
staring at you deeply into your deep,
You're
dark
communicating
brown
through
eyes.
your
Yes,
eyes.
exactly.
Yeah.
So
Even though you look like my uncle, Smokey.
You have an Uncle Smokey?
Yeah.
Can we talk about Uncle Smokey for at least a minute?
Yeah, he buttons up the top button just like you.
Will you be honest with me right now?
Yeah.
Is this look a little too tight? I know a lot of people will not watch the podcast.
You look like you're from Victorville.
Representing always. 909. High Desert.
Oh, man. All right, let's get to the questions.
Yes.
So, what motivates me to show up? I think, a big part of the reason why I think I went into private practice and the reason why I focus on helping people build relationships, healthy relationships, great relationships, is because I started off in my marriage with having no idea how to be a husband, how to show up as a husband. And similarly, when I had my daughter, no idea how to show up as a father, right? And so I think that really, I think about just the way I was such a horrible boyfriend when I was 18, 19, 20, this young kid, not knowing how to show up, and what I had to learn and go through to I guess, be a better partner, right? And respect my partner and work through the stuff that we had to work through to get to a place where we have a healthy marriage right now. I think that motivates me to show up because I know that a lot of the clients that I see, they are trying to learn relationship skills. They're trying to learn how to fix stuff with their marriages. They don't want to get divorced. They don't want to separate. They have families. They want to keep them together. And that's a big reason why I show up in my role. Yeah. So
At this point in time, this is whenever I'm going to tell you what motivates me to show up.
Yeah, what motivates you? I want to know.
It's really it depends day to day. I initially as you were sharing, and I was listening to what you're saying, but I'm also coming up with my own responses.
You never listen to me.
I always pay attention to you, even when I really shouldn't be. I should really turn you off. Motivates me to show up. Sometimes it's challenging to get motivated, right? There are some, maybe sometimes we just get out of bed because we've got a mouth to feed.
Sure.
But I think motivation
Bills
shifts.
to pay.
Yeah, exactly. So your basic things. this is a client that this is a question I will pose to clients often, like, why'd you get out of bed today? And probably often the first response is like, well, I have to, because there's rules to the program that I'm in, so I have
residential
to.
clients.
Yeah, right. Like, why'd you get out of bed?
Staff
I'm like,
woke me up.
Yeah, exactly. I'm gonna get put on a behavioral contract or something like that. I'm like, okay, all right, but seriously though, like, there's a reason why you don't want to be resistant right now. There's a reason why you're gonna follow this path right now, or we were talking about that movie Yes Man earlier with Jim Carrey, but like, what you're saying yes right now instead of saying no. Like, you're agreeing to do something where maybe a week ago you wouldn't do that. So motivation for me, I have to still want to do something. And I have to be inspired. So I would say what motivates me is an inspiration. Maybe it's my daughter. Maybe it's something I'm working with, and I made a commitment to that individual. Something for me.
Inspiration can change.
Yeah, inspiration can change. So I think one thing that I've practiced or I've tried to do throughout my life since getting sober was clean and sober was that I want to be a man of my word. My word is my bond. One time my reputation was complete shit. Speaking of Victorville, there are probably people that are in Victorville still that if they knew I was still around, they'd be like, that guy's no good. But present day, what motivates me is to not be that person I was, almost 10 years ago now. And what motivates me is to be better, to be different, and to show up and show people that, hey, and show whoever, like I said, it could change day to day, but just to show that change is possible.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
I think that's what motivates me even to do this podcast, is to be on a bigger stage and just show people, that.
I like you said, like, that the motivation changes, because I feel like it does. Yeah, because some things that motivate you today might not do the same thing for you tomorrow, right? And so you gotta, part of even life, I think, is like finding motivation and inspiration to show up or to do things or to wake up in the morning, and maybe sometimes that's the game, right? So
to counter an episode we just did talking about burnout, was that there are times that we are burned out and we're just and you mentioned Viktor Frankl just not too long ago, was like finding meaning in things, and sometimes it's very limited. It's the picture's not so clear. But finding, motivation, something. If tomorrow I woke up and I wasn't motivated to do this podcast anymore, I wouldn't quit the podcast. I would probably be like, why am I not so motivated?
You have a commitment.
I have a commitment. You're right. Accountability. Maybe accountability to you. Maybe accountability to somebody else. But and that inspires me. So I think motivations change, but it might not be in front of your face. Yeah. It might be around the bend somewhere, and you have to look a little deeper for that. Yeah. But that's what motivates me.
So I don't know if the person who asked this was looking for a deep answer like this, but I think we did that pretty good. Yeah.
Let's just end the. No, just kidding. We have a few. We have a good amount of other questions. One of the other questions that were asked was what are challenges in our role? For you, what are challenges? I like to start with you because that gives me more time to think while you share.
Yeah.
What are challenges right now in your role besides the fact that I'm making you answer every question first?
Being on the spot.
Yes. Do you want me to go first?
No, this is good. Thank you. You're so considerate. Thank you.
Yeah.
I think when I think of challenges, right now I think about, I have a private practice, and it's different, just the stability versus a W-2 job, right? And so,
dude, I was gonna jump all over that and just
so I mean, that's where my head goes. I don't know if they meant like emotional challenges, but I mean, I have those too, definitely, but I think that's the first thing that comes to mind, and I can name off a couple things, but I think the I don't want to say financial, because I don't feel financially stressed, but the uncertainty of like, what's next month going to look like? What's the following month going to, like, even if I have like, a good month where I'm seeing a lot of clients and I'm doing some great work, like I always think, okay, that's great for this month, but what about next month? So that's a challenge that I think I'm facing right now.
I applaud you on if you don't know Manny Romero personally, Mr. Therapist, one thing you've been able to do, which I struggle with, is that you are. I feel like we're both outgoing in different ways, but like you really know how to like market yourself and like really like, and I think that's a challenge for me. Is like we've had conversations about like, and even based on the episode, like being burned out. Sometimes like I've thought about like getting out of the counseling and going more into the coaching aspect of things, and
which you can do.
Well, I know,
I keep telling you.
Yeah, I know. No, you are really like a fan of me doing that, but like I look at you and how you challenge it would be challenging for me to like really be on. I feel like you could be on like all the time. I'm just, that might be a challenge for me, is that like it's hard for me to like to have that energy, which I feel like you often have. Like I mean, how do you?
Thank you, man. I actually when I hear you say that, I think that I feel the same way about you. That's so funny.
Would you describe yourself as an introvert or extrovert?
I just had this conversation with a client. I would describe myself as an extroverted introvert.
Oh my gosh! Yeah, so, the best of both worlds.
Yeah, so I'm an introvert. I think I get, I feel drained talking to people.
Yeah.
But I'm on the social, like very extroverted side of that spectrum of that. So, but yeah. I think like when in response to that though, like I'm not very good at being on all the time. I think I've been in private practice for a couple years now, for probably a year and a half, and I've been having to do that or to like push myself to do that. So a part of it is like, this jump to private practice, there wasn't a lot of planning around it because I started to plan it and I would just get stuck in the plans or the what ifs. So I just jumped and I did it. And so now I just kind of have to figure it out along the way.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but yeah, that's when I think of challenges, that's where my head goes to. But
for me, I guess the challenge for my role is stuff that we've touched base on a little bit. It's just, and kind of just what I mentioned, the idea of like needing to be on, and maybe this expectation of what I'm supposed to be at all times, and just balancing that with like my own with who I am and what I'm. It's hard, and I guess I just mentioned it, just being on all the time. Yeah. I think there's this expectation of like you're supposed to be a specific way, particularly with clients too. I think if you build a reputation, you're different in the sense like you bring somebody in and like they don't. There's a reputation, but like like you said, where I work at, the clients are kind of fed in, so it's like, oh well, we know this about that person, or there's already like a known factor about it. Once again, a reputation. Yeah. So I think the biggest challenge is just to deliver the expectation that's created for you.
Like you have a really good group, and it's like you got to hit the same level next time, or
like even like I think we've talked about me being very direct with clients, and like I've heard this recently, like Jesse, there was a comparison with me and another therapist, and we do the same exercise. One person does it in residential, the other person does it in outpatient, and they would tell me, oh, they're fortunate they didn't get you because you would have asked the questions this way, right? Yeah. And in my mind, I know the therapist that did it, she's really good at what she does, and I know that and the way that she asks the questions are different. I mean, they're same questions, but like she's got her style, I got my style.
They compare you.
But yeah, it's like already like, I mean, part of it's nice, ego-wise. I'm like, yeah, cool, like, oh yeah, I do it so good, right? Like I do it this way, and you're lucky you escaped me, right? But I just like, it's just that the challenge to be a certain way, and I don't want to. I'm super flawed, and I don't want to always have to fit that mold that's been created for me. So I think that's just the challenge of personalities of human beings as well, though.
Yeah. Hopefully we don't spend too long on this question, but I want to add something to it, because as you were talking, something else came to mind. The other day, I started to I forgot what I was doing or what I was listening to, but I remember having this experience of starting to come more to terms and accept this part of me that like emotionally, like I I struggle with a lot of self-doubt. And like before I had this experience of like really accepting that in myself, I feel like I was doing a lot to try to hide it or to try to like overcompensate for it.
Okay.
And so, I think it's, I had this feeling, this experience of acknowledging like this might be something I just struggle with all the time.
Yeah.
Right. The self-doubt. And sometimes I feel like I'm the only one, or like I don't know, I'm not the only one, but like if I'm in a room with people, it's like, yeah, I'm the only one in that room feeling like I'm not that good, or I'm not, I'm not smart enough, or I'm not, social enough, or I don't have the same skills as this person. I don't sound like that person. And so, that I feel like is a struggle that has been highlighted and really like brought out and in my awareness through the private practice experience, because I've had to figure how to do stuff on my own, and I've had to put myself out there. And so some of the self-doubt demons come up. But it's just as you were talking about that, I was like, oh yeah, that's what I struggle with too.
What was the moment that created that, or what was the catalyst for that? Would you say just an interaction, or
I might have listened to a podcast.
Wait, there's other podcasts out there that are like
there are
us?
other podcasts. Yeah, I might have listened to our own podcast.
Yeah, please say you listened to ours. You gave us at least 10 hits.
Yeah,
and you listened to another.
Yeah,
okay,
exactly.
Cool. All right.
Yeah.
We need followers. Actually, that's
why
listeners.
why we have 13 plays, because I listened to it 12 times. So, but yeah, I think it might have been like I was listening or reading something. I don't remember, but I just remember having this feeling of like, shit, like I've been trying to get to a place where I don't feel self-doubt anymore.
Yeah.
And maybe I've been looking at that all wrong. Like maybe I just like have to just lean into that and accept that this is who I am. Like I'm a person filled with self-doubt, and I'll continue to have that as I challenge myself. And if I don't feel self-doubt, then I'm probably being too comfortable and I'm not challenging myself enough. So I just started to come to terms with it, or have a better relationship with it, I guess. Yeah.
This could be a terrible analogy, but I'm just going to go with it, and then we'll go on to the next question. But there's this movie called Unbreakable with Bruce Willis. Have you ever seen it?
No.
Came out, I think, late 90s. There's a guy who made The Sixth Sense. I would say his name, but I'm totally going to screw it up because I've always mispronounced it for the last 30 plus years. So, but
don't fuck it up.
I'm not going to say it. So, but he made The Sixth Sense. He made it with Bruce Willis was in it. Samuel L. Jackson's in it.
Okay.
So Bruce Willis has the ability, he's somewhat like a superhero, and when he touches people, he can see almost like their turmoil, or he could sense, he could feel like the good in people, so he could see if they do bad things, right? And I think about this movie because it was probably maybe a couple years ago, but I was leaving work and I was feeling self-conscious about myself. I was having some self-doubt, and not just even like my abilities, just like how I look.
Yeah.
I had like a zit, I remember, and I just was just like, I'm like, dude, I am like in my late 30s and I still have like zits, and I'm thinking like the worst things, like I'm ugly, I'm not attractive. I had a bad day as well, and I'm just thinking like, I'm not good at my job, man. Just all these negative thoughts are coming in, right?
Yeah.
And for some reason, I looked down the hall where I was working, and I looked down the hall and I looked at all the people that were in that hall. Hall was very crowded at the time, and I thought to myself, and for some reason I thought of that movie, and I thought to myself, like, if I were to walk by everybody and put my hand on people's shoulders and think about their lives and think about their problems and think about their self-doubts, maybe I would realize like that a lot of people have maybe similar feelings like me.
Yeah.
And the reality is, like, when I walk down that hall, it's not a runway. I'm not the president walking up to make a speech or something. Like, nobody's paying attention to me because everybody's so tied up into their own self-doubts or just into their life. And if I could just start to say, hey, you know what? I'm not those things. I'm not unattractive. I'm not this talentless, I do have talents. Like, self-doubt just creeps in and can just be the ugliest, gnarliest thing. So it's that freedom of self-doubt to walk down that hallway and not to be so worried about like what everybody's thinking. Yeah. There's a real freedom and power with that.
The liberation from it, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So
very good.
Next question. So the difference, this is still something that's like popping up. I want maybe I can answer it because I was thinking about what's the difference between a counselor and a therapist.
I feel like we've either tried to answer this a lot of times or we never got to it.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I feel like we've tried to touch on it. Here's the thing for me. I think
therapists are better.
Yeah.
That's what you were about to say, right?
Yes, I was going to say most therapists aren't drunks and drug addicts. No. No. So here's the thing: addiction counselor, they have a specific modality, right? They work with they treat people that are having problems with substance abuse, right? I call myself the counselor because I feel like with addiction and mental health, like I've done a lot of training, a lot of work to where I work with both. Dual diagnosis is something that's just very common, right? I think that what I came to understand for me is like there's not a huge difference with counseling and therapists. I think it's just it's certifications. It could be education, but then I see a lot of I see them coming together
the
as
requirements for this.
Yeah, it's initially what you start. I mean, it's kind of like working out of your scope of practice. I know that some people are like, "Well, this could be out of your scope."
Sure.
So, would you want to explain?
But there's stuff that could be out of my scope as a therapist too, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I think that there's and what's this?
As a counselor, do you give advice, like more advice than a therapist would? Like, because like as a counselor, are you more like this is kind of what you got to do? I know a lot of counselors do that. They're like this is like the way, or this is
but I think I've touched on this before. I don't try to give out advice if it sneaks out, but I think that. I feel like there's a lot more similarities, and for me, even though we wrote this question down to talk about, like, I don't have a definitive answer. I was kind of hoping you'd be like, I know, therapists are better, and I will explain why.
If there is a therapist or a counselor out there that knows to distinguish the difference, please let us know. Yeah. I will try to. I think if there is any difference, I would just say, I mean, no one's, they're their own, like. Specialty, right?
Yeah.
No one is on top of no one else. I think the difference between a therapist and a counselor is, I don't know, maybe like therapists, I know they have different modalities, different theories.
Would you say what therapists are more well versed though initially? Like they're more training. You guys can work.
We have more education.
You like I don't working with children or adolescents. Like there's just a lot more things that you guys are capable of doing.
I can't speak to what a counselor does, but I can tell you like as a therapist, you have more education requirements because you have to get a master's degree. And you have to get 3,000 hours of like counseling experience with families as an MFT, especially. Also, I think as a therapist, like we focus a lot on like self-exploration and like helping you understand yourself better through like either asking questions or like helping you have a place to talk and to explore your feelings, to become aware of things. So I don't know, like I don't know if maybe you're thinking like, well, yeah, that's exactly what I do. I don't know. So, but yeah, that's what I can speak to like the therapist, right, role and what they do, and so that's all I got. I mean,
I think
I'll tell you this: when me and you facilitated a room, I don't see a difference between us, though.
I think that's kind of the confusing thing for me sometimes is that I work side by side with therapists all the time, and like I see so many more similarities than I do differences. Yeah. But I also recognize, like, there are, like you said, like trainings or just education. But
there's a difference in pay. There's a difference in who hires you.
Right.
I mean, there's differences like that.
Right.
Too.
So, and I think counselors aren't really provided the option to do private practice either, unless they go into some type of coaching.
Interventionists.
Yeah, exactly. Interventionists, coaches. So those outlets for counselors. Yeah. But we're therapists. Like you can do a private practice. I was
just saying, I hope like therapists aren't looking at me like, "Damn, you're really devaluing our degree."
No,
like, I'm not trying to do that.
I will say for me, this is just me personally, and this is like I admire so many therapists, and the fact is like, yeah, I've more wanted to change my style as a counselor because I think for me, what I've experienced is sometimes counselors are almost limited in some ways, and a lot of times counselors move more into a kind of a case management.
Yeah, that's true.
And case management would be somebody who, what's the definition of a case manager?
Well, you provide resources.
Right.
You help clients set up like who they're going to see, the professionals that they're going to see to work on their stuff.
More
doctors,
life skills based, so I think like I'll see counselors kind of fall into that, and they really do like that. I've worked with
you're just a unique counselor that has like therapeutic skills. And
I like this a lot more. Can we just ditch all the rest of the questions and talk about how I'm so unique?
Yes.
But no, I think I've always gravitated more to the clinical aspect. So that's why, like, I do know counselors that just love case management. I know counselors are like, I don't want to run a group with. I'd rather prefer not to do that. I'm not big on running like groups where, you know me, I'm just kind of like, I'll take on all the groups this week, and I don't want to have to, like, take somebody to their appointment or help them find like find like a doctor, just I don't want to find.
You don't want to do the admin work.
Yeah, I do not. I want to do the like working with people thing. So it's
I love that.
So we can answer this one, and I think that we'd have to wrap it up here. So. How long should somebody stay in therapy? I think you had mentioned like the idea. Well, I think you had mentioned at least giving the therapist like what, like five sessions. Did you mention that before? Like at least if you got a new therapist, how many times should you give that person like?
Yeah, I think I'd give them anywhere from like 3 to 5 sessions to decide if a therapist is a fit for you or not.
Yeah.
I mean, sometimes you can decide in one if you know for sure, but. How long should a client stay in therapy? That was the question?
Yeah, that was the question.
I would say there's a couple variations to that. Maybe there's nothing else to talk about, right? Like it's the energy in the room is flatter. It's like there's really nothing else that comes up. That's usually, and as a therapist, I'm always having that discussion. Where are we at today? Like how are things going? How do you feel? Like this? How you wanted to feel? Where are you at right now in reference to that point? Right? Like. So you're just always having those discussions with clients.
Yeah. So there's really not like a limitation on like.
No.
Okay.
I think it's a collaborative discussion. You discuss it with your client and decide together like how far to go.
Quickly, have you had a client before where you're like, hey, I think I've kind of tapped out on the work, or that doesn't ever get to that point, right? Do you feel like you could always probably find something to talk about?
I'll usually bring it up, kind of like, hey, like, our conversations have changed, or like, like, how are you feeling about the pace of the frequency we're meeting?
Right.
And we'll start conversations that way. So, yeah.
I just want to say regarding like this podcast here, this episode, it's really cool. That these questions that people have submitted to us, like we will take these, and I will, after we end this episode, I will think about like, okay, it's like I'll think of new ideas and throw them into other podcasts. So I really truly want to thank like the viewers out there for putting out the questions, and I could see us doing like another episode based on more questions that are submitted.
Yeah, please send more. Please, these are awesome. So cool, man.
Thanks, guys.